Hey, Michael J.
I saw a pretty clever tweet today. It showed all the unbanned cards in Modern. It showed Plains, Swamp, Mountain, Forest, and Basic Island.
Yeah, I mean, you're alluding to snow-covered lands being not exactly the thing that's pushed. You know, like before, where snow-covered lands are basically just strictly better because of Arcum's Astrolabe, which is still the case in Legacy and Vintage.
Yeah, but now at least you can play an island, not feel too bad about it.
Yeah. God, they need to make one really good snow-covered hoser and then just never talk about it again, you know? But, Arcum's Astrolabe busted. Isn't Arcum's Astrolabe basically just like... It's like, you know all those cards like Prismatic Omens or whatever? Like, okay, way back in the day it was Celestial Omen, right? Like where the, like, Celestial Dawn, I mean.
Celestial Dawn, all your stuff is white, all your library is white, yeah.
Yeah, so for one white, you can just cast whatever you want now, right? But then it's like, as time goes on, it's like, okay, there's stuff like Prismatic Omen or whatever, where for one and a green, you can just cast whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
Arcum's Astrolabe is the spot where it's like, okay, well, what if it just costs one and also is a cantrip? Like, wait, what? What do you mean? One and is a cantrip? Why?
I played that card very happily for 2 and was a cantrip, but it wasn't snow. It was just colorless. I think it was, what's that called, like Pentad Prism? Something like that. That was an okay card for Standard. But, you know, Arcum's Astrolabe was a modern, it was designed to be played in Modern, so you can't play 2 mana boring cantrips, not when 1 mana not boring cantrips are available. And it was played in a gosh darn large number of decks, control decks, Urza decks. I
think the card would still be good at 2. I don't think it would be format defining the way that it is, was, but I just think it's that busted. But
it's gone. Yeah, the card is silly.
It's completely defining Legacy, so I guess it's got a home.
Something to do. It's not going to get banned in Legacy. They let you do whatever you want in Legacy.
Well, it needs to have a home somewhere. They gotta move units. But like Arcum's Astrolabe is, I don't think it's like good, the effect it has on Legacy. Maybe it's fine because at least it's good against Blood Moon. But
I guess that's something. So the card is banned in Modern, but there were, I don't know, more than a half a dozen bans across the multiverse announced on July 13th, 2000.
Kind of just every different direction too.
Yeah,
like it's a lot of weird. I mean, it's like it's almost like the banned and restricted list version of all 23rd cards. You know what I mean? Where it's like half of the changes are in historic, which is allegedly still a format. Although I guess it's a lot more of a format after these changes. But then some of the changes, it's like, okay, there's one unbanning in Pioneer, kind of like the opposite of Arcum's Astrolabe. You could just Oath of Nissa, which is kind of an Arcum's Astrolabe, is now unbanned in Pioneer, which is cool. I think that obviously Oath of Nissa was quite busted back in the early days when it was so defined by devotion, but the format has really moved into a direction where that's just not even close to a problem. And I personally think it's good bringing Oath of Nissa back because it was once upon a time that was the real problem.
Yeah, I mean, did that deck have a lot of overlap with Oko? It's hard. Were they mono green?
Mono green. Yep, just Nykthos with mono green. But like, that's just so far away from the issue nowadays. So what do you think, man? Oath of Nissa? There's a lot of Planeswalkers now.
I'm excited to potentially play Oath of Nissa. I always liked that card. It doesn't seem like Arcum's Astrolabe to me in terms of kind of a bad effect that it has. So,
oh no, I just mean Arcum's Astrolabe in terms of it gives you all your colors. When you have Oath of Nissa, all your Planeswalkers are free. Well, not free, but they're whatever colors you want.
So I always liked Oath of Nissa because you could do... So Oath of Nissa, I think, is a very comparable power level to a lot of the other cards that cost G, just exactly G, that are kind of a land searching, mana fixing sort of card. You know, like, is this card like so much better or worse than Traverse the Uvenwald, or what's the one that gives you energy? Right? They're like
Attune with Ether.
Yeah, they're like all those cards are really good, right?
Oh yeah.
But like the main difference is that this one's a permanent, right? So it doesn't go directly to the graveyard unless you draw a second one. So obviously you get a potential ups with Devotion. I always liked it because like you could cast it. It was a very cheap card to cast, and then you could trigger to set up your
Delirium too.
Well, I mean, the one that makes a giant guy, and then you pick up all your permanents.
You
right?
would love just bouncing all the enters to battlefield triggers.
So, but yeah, this gives you one to gives you the next turn's enter the battlefield trigger, and it sets up that effect, right? Because it's so cheap, it gives you the discount.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Nissa is a great card. It's one of those. It's comparable to a lot of those other cards, but if you actually do the work, it becomes better. You know.
Yeah, it has way more cool potential synergies because it doesn't go directly to the graveyard.
For some, I mean, Traverse the Uvenwald, I guess it depends on your definition of cool. It works really well with one-ofs.
I think both Oath of Nissa and Traverse the Uvenwald reward dedicated deck building. So all these cards...
I don't think Attune with Aether is the most open-ended.
Well... All right, I guess all three of them reward very differently specific deck building. Although I think there's probably some overlap between Oath of Nissa and Traverse the Uvenwald. But I mean, all of them are just fine.
Yeah.
Like, you can just play them in a deck and they do the thing that you want. But if you want to do one of Delirium type stuff, Traverse the Uvenwald is very specifically tuned for that, right? I think Oath of Nissa is probably the most open-ended of the three, although it gives you a primary benefit if you're playing with Planeswalkers, and that's kind of specific, but I think that probably half of the good Oath of Nissa decks never took advantage of the ability to get extra colors from Planeswalkers, unless you're Wrath Levy, in which case that was some kind of Wrath Levy deck building. And I mean, Attune with Aether is obviously super narrow compared to the other two.
Adventurous Impulse is kind of the generic one. It's the weakest of the four, but it's also the most flexible open-ended. And that's mostly just because it gets the tiniest little bit of reward for having no synergy with anything.
It's just nothing.
And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, the most powerful the most powerful, in my opinion, is Ancient Stirrings.
I have absolutely no disagreement with you on that one. I mean, if for no other reason than it kind of digs harder, right?
It not kind of. It unequivocally digs harder.
Search your library digs harder than look at X cards on top.
That's the kicker. That's the bonus. Like, I don't know. I guess.
I think it usually digs harder. That's
okay.
But the one on the table is Oath of Nissa, unbanned. I like it. What is the problem in Pioneer, right? So we're past the point of Luris being the problem in Pioneer. Are we back to a world of 6/6s that kind of nicks your own deck? By the way, I mean, just to be clear, the Ancient Stirrings evolution is like defining Modern as we speak and up. But fortunately, that's not really the haps in Pioneer. In Pioneer itself, where the Oath of Nissa is now legal, I think the biggest issues with the format right now are that, I mean, I don't know, maybe I don't. So part of the, I don't know, maybe this sounds bad, but part of the problem is that like nobody's playing the format really. Like there's only like a couple hundred people that play the format, so it's hard to know for sure what is wrong with the format, if anything is wrong. But I am deeply suspicious of the idea of Inverter of Truth decks being foundational to the format. So I think that I laughed a little bit when you said that. I think it would have been a really popular format, but for kind of the global health crisis that's going on. The last two physical tournaments I played in, actually, were both Pioneer tournaments. The very last tournament I ever played in, I think back in February or March, I think I went 01 to start, and then I got a call from a friend to see if I wanted to get sushi, so I dropped. But the one previous to that, I won.
Sick brags. Has friend, got a call, and sushi.
But the one before that, I won. My deck didn't have Oath of Nissa, though, because it was not unbanned yet at that point. Instead, it had Monastery Swiftspear. So just in case you were wondering if my deck had Monastery Swiftspear, it did.
Yep. I believe you, man.
Yeah, I certainly cast Eidolon to the Great Revel into their whatever they were playing. It's always the same when you have Eidolon to the Great Revel.
So actually, before we jump off of Pioneer, there were some kind of funny new breakout decks just recently in Pioneer that I was curious your thoughts on. Just like on the 13th, there were a couple here. There was a mono black deck. It's not really mono black because it's mono black, but with Kroxa and Hazaret, which is kind of an interesting one. But it's kind of like it's got some Reed Duke energy going. It's 4 copies of Waste Knot to go along with 3 Davriel Rogue Shadow Mage and 4 Liliana. Which Liliana? Liliana, Waker of the Dead. It's definitely a different mix of Rakdos cards than most of the other Rakdos decks are playing. Obviously, everybody plays Kroxa these days, but it's hard to go wrong with 4 copies of Waste Knot backed up with with quite possibly you got to think that Liliana, Waker of the Dead, and Davriel are both top 15 black, mono black planeswalkers of all time.
That's
I think they are.
I don't know how many black planeswalkers there have been historically. All right, so let's look at Doomwake's deck. So first of all, I love Waste Knot. I think it's I don't know.
This sounds like you're about to say, "Oh, I love you," but
who hasn't tried to make a sweet Waste Knot deck? Right, so Waste Knot is an enchantment. It costs 1 and a B, and whenever an opponent discards a creature card, create a 2/2 black zombie creature. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, add BB to your mana pool. Whenever an opponent discards a non-creature, non-land card, draw a card. So basically, you want to get Waste Knot into play and then do stuff to make your opponent discard cards. Right, so Davriel Rogue Shadow Mage. This is a card that you play it and you can get 3 Waste Knot triggers out of it, unless something else goes on for you. And then obviously there are other cards that help.
Liliana gives you unlimited. You just keep +1ing her, baby. Yeah.
Sure. Obviously you've got Kroxa gives you a lot of ways to make somebody discard.
Yep. Collective Brutality, Thoughtseize, Colligan's Command. Deck's loaded.
What's cool about Collective Brutality is it could potentially make both players discard, and that helps you set up Hazaret the Fervent. For that matter, it helps you set up Kroxa.
Oh, yeah.
So, I think I have my suspicions that this deck is probably, if you were going to play like a Pioneer Pro Tour tomorrow, I don't think this is probably going to be the deck that would win. But if you wanted to exercise your creativity and do something really cool with Waste Knot and still do, still be reasonably competitive, this seems like it has some action to me. But, it seems it's not super fast. It doesn't seem like it. I guess it can defend itself. Fatal Push and Eliminate are reasonably inexpensive cards. But I think this is like more of a what creative thing can I do than a what brutal thing can I do.
I think this could be great. Like if you're playing like a 3-person team, unified Pioneer constructed, and you want this, you want to have 2 different Rakdos decks on your team.
Yeah, this one is not using either of the good Lilianas that you might want.
Like you could even build the 2 Rakdos decks and just use some slightly less good land. Like split them up,
I don't know, Patrick. This one's got Colgan's Command and Fatal Push. I think
yeah,
the other deck might want some of those cards.
Nah. A lot of people don't even use Colgan's Command anymore in Rakdos.
This deck has some sweet cards. I think it has like 2 Toss. It's got all the Soul Guide lanterns. Can you imagine being one of multiple Rakdos decks on the team and you're using Soul Guide Lantern? I mean, can't you invest in a black card?
I don't know. I like Soul Guide Lantern, but I suppose if you're actually doing Unified.
No, same. I love Soul Guide Lantern. It's great in like a mono red deck. It's great in a green deck. The black deck doesn't need. I mean, the black deck certainly can.
No, it's still the right way. It's still the right one to use, though.
In a non-team unified deck list. Yes.
Part of it is you get to hide a card. You know, like when you're going empty-handed, it gives you access to an extra card that you have banked.
Yes. And
it's just a little bit more powerful than some of the other graveyard options.
Yeah, I mean, in the abstract, it's awesome. Like, obviously, if you're playing... It's probably the best anti-graveyard card you can possibly play in the format if you're playing against Uro, right? So, like, you can use Soul Guide Lantern to ting Uro and then just save up for later, right? That's one of its main things that's great.
You can. Leyline of the Void's not too bad either if that's your jam. Depends on how bad you want it.
But that's very, you know... You've
got to want it pretty bad.
Feet.
Yep.
Anyway, I think this deck is sweet. I don't know if it's my speed for highly competitive play, but I do think it's super sweet, and Doomwake is sweet for going 5-0.
Dude, we cover so many Doomwake decks. Love to see it. So the other one is the same tournament. So, oh boy. So it's not even the Eldritch Evolution Neoform deck, but, you know, shout out to Sivek for putting up a finish with this bad boy. The key here is that the format is kind of all over the place, and part of it, I think, is just that there haven't been high enough stakes yet to ruin it, you know?
So here's a deck I think could potentially ruin it. The Rift 289 went 5-0 in the same event with just a mono blue Flyers deck. Mm-hmm. So in the past, we've seen decks like this, right? This deck's got Mausoleum Wanderer, Nebelgast Herald, Rattle Chains, etc. But usually, people who have gone this direction have had to go multiple colors. And here we see the Rift 289 just straight blue, 19 land, 1 Castle Vantress. This is bringing back Curious Obsession. Obviously, that was a super effective way to go about it in Standard maybe 2 years ago. And I think one of the reasons why this strategy could be quite viable right now is, A, there's a terminal number of sweet, cheap blue evasion creatures, right? So Shacklegeist is a brand new card from M21 that got printed. Sea Dasher Octopus, 2 sets ago, alongside the ubiquitous Brazen Borrower. But also, like, the counters are conditional, right? But they're real cheap, right? There's a ton of, 1 and 2 casting cost counters that just fit perfectly into this strategy. 4x Lofty Denial. This card is like a 2-mana Force Spike, but it's like a convolute if you've got a flyer.
Yeah, it's a bigger mana leak most of the time for this deck, and the only time it doesn't have a flyer is like on turn 2 and that's only sometimes, but at which point the Force Spike's usually good enough anyway.
So this deck seems to have I think this deck would just be highly advantaged against some of the decks that are trying to do a really powerful combo kill or generate an enormous amount of board position or something. I think.
Well, a lot of the Yorion decks, right?
Yeah,
that's actually one of the cards that benefits a lot from Oath of Nissa anyway. Yorion loves blinking. Oath of Nissa.
Absolutely. Right, it's this deck would thrash a deck that's based on casting a giant companion, right? But the thing that's odd to me is if you look at the sideboard, it's 4 Damping Spear, 4 Mystic Subdual, 3 Disdainful Stroke, 4 Mystical Dispute. Mystical Dispute is obviously insane. That's fantastic in this strategy. I would imagine you would want more cards against legit creature decks, like green-based creatures or red-based creature decks. And I just don't see what's your plan to race? Those guys are all bigger and more efficient than yours. They have real removal.
I think it's to race. You do have a bunch of plays. Like, for instance, if you have Nebelgeist Herald, you can easily win the race that way, right?
I mean, it's a tough way to do it. It's a 3-mana card against people who are going to... The problem is, I think, other opponents could play, like, 3 quality 1-drops in the first 2 turns, and the Double Guest Herald gets a little slow. Also, I mean...
Everybody's a red deck to you. I love it.
No, I mean, also people who are casting some kind of Llanowar Elf, right? Like, those people are just as terrible. I mean, I think, like, you would want some kind of equipment that gives you lifelink. You know, there's many options on that.
I don't know.
Like that.
That sounds kind of fancy.
You think an equipment that gives you lifelink is fancy for a deck with like 28 evasion creatures?
Yeah, this deck is so homogenous. This deck has only 3 types of cards besides its mana. Like it's so homogenous. Adding another card that decreases the thickness, the richness, the high concentration of homogeneity. I think it's fancy.
Yeah, I would argue that like a Shadow Spear is very similar in what it does in particular matchups to a Curious Obsession.
I could buy that, but it's still. I mean, at a certain point, life isn't giving you the same material for your deck to function. If there's a sufficient number of people that are like, if there's really that many people playing red, just play the anti-red cards that are on theme, you know? Like somebody who's protection from red.
Like a Cerulean Drake, something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly never beating a Cerulean Drake.
Besides, you're not even a red player in this format. Aren't you playing the mono-white deck, man? That's where your heart is, right? Like,
I don't know.
Putting your boggles, like hex-proof less boggles.
I was, you know, I don't have any distinct allegiance, but, you know, if it was a shot in the dark, I think I always pick Monastery Swiftspear. I mean, what am I going to do, lie?
So I think that the real kind of the other weirdo card that I kind of wanted to talk about, it turns out it wasn't the Eldritch Evolution Neoform deck. It's the Unesh Cryosphinx Sovereign, which is 4 blue, 4/4 flying. Sphinx spells you cast cost 2 less, and when the Unesh or another Sphinx enters the battlefield under your control, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put one pile in your hand and the other into your graveyard.
So, Unesh, Cryosphinx Sovereign, are you talking about in the context of Civic's deck, the Eldritch Evolution deck?
Yep.
Okay, so this card is a 1-of in this deck, right? It costs 6, so we get there sacrificing a 5, right? That's the way we go?
No, you could also do a 4 with Eldritch Evolution.
Okay.
Yeah, you do a 5 if you're going to Neoform, and you do a 4 if you're going to Eldritch Evolution.
So then once you've got it, you've got this 4/4 flyer in play. Does it matter that Sphinx spells cost 2 less to cast? Are there a lot of other Sphinxes in this deck? No. So library manipulation.
So you draw some cards early.
Yep. Not
early. You immediately draw some cards. You flip some cards, so you're doing a little bit more stocking of your graveyard. But it's also it's just another big card advantage-y type. You can set you want to have some 6s so that you can go get Agent of Treachery with your Neoform, right?
Yeah, they haven't banned it in this format yet.
And yeah. The use of Tasigur, though, is the one I love. Like, sacrificing Tasigur to go get Agent of Treachery is just efficient. The part I'm trying to wrap my head around, so like Woodland Bellower, I totally get that. Woodland Bellower seems like a sweet 1-of. The fact that you can still keep some of the value on your way up the chain, and it's like such a nice alternate dimension. The part that I'm trying to figure out is Unesh really giving you enough instead of just more of what you already have?
I think like I would just be very happy to have a second Bellower instead of an Unesh, right? Although Here's the thing about Unesh. Really good combination with Thassa Deep Dwelling versus
True. That's a really, really good argument.
I think like Woodland Bellower, you're going to run out of interesting things to do. You know, that's the
okay.
You know, it's really exciting, and then you're like, what am I really doing here? How many Elvish Rejuvenators am I really gonna
makes
search
sense.
up?
That's cool. No, I'm sold. That's actually a really, really good combo.
Yeah, so I think like Unesh can probably create very difficult situations long term for your opponents to deal with, especially if it's allowing you to dig into more library manipulation, right? Like, and I don't know. I feel like this deck probably has like so much card advantage going up the chain that it doesn't. I mean, it's going to sound heretical to say this. You don't even really need to get the Agent of Treachery a lot of the time, right? That's a great thing to do, I think, sometimes, but probably like 6 cards ahead at the point that Unesh resolves.
Well, I don't know. You gotta go over the top of some people.
That's fair.
You gotta have a plan to make sure that you're going to be big. You know.
But the thing is, like, this deck doesn't go over the top of the strategies that the people who you have to kind of go over the top of are sometimes presenting, right? Like this doesn't. That card, Unesh, doesn't stop somebody from combo killing you, right? You need like multiple.
No, that's not what I mean. I mean, like if you're playing against another Uro deck.
Oh, okay. I think it'd be sweet to steal somebody's Uro. They deserve it. Like anybody who's playing Uro deserves to have their Uro stolen, in my opinion. It's just basic etiquette.
Dude, Terminal Justice with the Luris in Breach combo. You know, Hidden Strings, Underworld Breach, Lotus Field, that whole thing. Still packing Luris of the Dream Den. It's interesting for the teamer deck, right?
I mean, I'm just trying. Do you really have a lot of time to take advantage of this? Is that a thing?
Why not?
Well, okay, here's the thing. Let's say you get like a lot of mana, right? You can just like Luris up your Thassa's Oracle, right? That's the thing.
Well, it becomes deterministic also. You can just mill your whole deck, and when you mill your whole deck, you get Luris out of the sideboard, and then you use Luris to get back the Oracle.
Yeah.
That seems pretty good, right?
Yeah. It is much simpler than some of the other ways that people can win. And in the case that you have an overabundance of mana, and sometimes you have to give up other resources, right? Like cards in hand or something to get there. But if you have enough mana, then getting Luris for free is pretty simple.
I can't help but notice we're seeing a whole lot of Yorions and Lurises, even though they cost 3 more. Sure makes me think those two are the best too.
I think I agree. So if you look at like GNT's deck, GNT top of the page, 5-0, 35 land deck, obviously like an 80 card Yorion deck. I always like to see, a Yorion Sky Nomad in the sideboard alongside multiple Yorions in the main deck. That's how you know somebody means it. Right? So the only question I have is why not 3 Yorions in the main deck? Why only 2?
Too dense. You got to keep it right, right around 1.25% Yorions.
I mean, this is like an 80 card
maybe
deck.
2.5%. Yeah, 2.5%.
Like, I don't know. There's plenty of 5-drops in this deck that I would rather have a Yorion than some of these 5-drops. Like, I think the third Yorion, you get more mileage than the third Teferi Hero of Dominaria, for example. Right? Like, Teferi's sweet. But, Yorion has a lot of synergy here.
Yeah, but it's always... All the Yorions you draw are kind of the second Yorion. I mean, they're the first Yorion, but they're the second Yorion, whereas the Teferi you draw is like a novel element.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's weird, just weird to me to not play the maximum number of your theme card in an 80-card deck.
Yeah, but you were always the king of... I'm going to play with 4 Jittes to put on my 4 Izumarus, and we're going to...
Yeah, that's how you win a Jitte fight. It was so weird to me. I think Tsuyoshi Fujita pointed this out to me, and I would just do everything in my power to avoid a Jitte fight. So I'm just like, all right, I want to pick my deck so that I don't have to get in a Jitte fight because I'm going to ignore Jittes. And if I'm in a Jitte fight, I can sacrifice my guys so they don't get counters. And I'm just thinking all the different ways to not have a Jitte fight. And I think Tsuyoshi was just like, you just keep building decks that win the Jitte fights. Like, why are you trying to avoid the Jitte fight? I was like, that's a good point. And then, I put Jitte on a gnarled mass, and that was it.
You alluded to earlier, Asian. I can't gnarled mass right now, man.
Dude, we had Riku Gusari in a bunch of decks. Fujita had to convince me to play Jitte instead of Riku Gusari in the main deck. I was like, look, we won a PTQ with 4 Riku Gusari main deck, no Jitte. And he's just like, that's cool. It's still not right.
So Agent of Treachery is now banned in Historic. Agent of Treachery, Winota, Fires of Invention, those 3 were all suspended, and it's kind of just some catch-up, with like Winota, Flip Agent of Treachery, that whole thing, Fires of Invention, all that. And interestingly, we haven't really seen, like, since Fires of Invention getting banned, we haven't really seen any of that polymorph stuff with the Red Planeswalker. But there's also two more Nexus of Fate, just straight banned, and with good reason. Hopefully just keep banning that card in all formats. And then Burning Trient Emissary of all things is suspended, trying to slow the format down a little bit.
So all the first 3 cards, Agent of Treachery, Winota, Joiner of Forces, and Fires of Invention, so they were all previously suspended. So, like, R&D had already put a ring on it, right? Now it's just the other ring.
Yeah, well, and they've already... So part of it is that when they first made the Historic format, the world was in a little bit different of a place. And they set up this thing because of it being a digital-only format to try to give it a more digital-specific rotation schedule. But now that they've changed the rotation rules in large part because there are only digital formats since it's the apocalypse, they've decided that for the time being, they're going to just keep going with the Historic thing that they've set up, even though it's a little redundant, and kind of just evaluate a little bit later in the year. The Historic metagame is kind of a weird animal anyway. It's just, it lives almost in this no man's land, right? Like, it's not just that it's in between Pioneer and Standard. It's also just got a collection of weird oddballs that are just legal.
Yeah, so I think that when you're in a space like that, also it's not even in terms of the cards, right? It's like there's just some cards that appear in it that the rest of its set wasn't there, right? So,
right.
So like the historical checks and balances that keep certain cards, in check, right, or balanced, might not be there in Historic that were there when that card was available in Standard, or for example. I like the banning of Fires of Invention, Winota, and Agent of Treachery, 3 cards that have bedeviled folks in Standard. And I think, you're right about Nexus of Fate. That's a really good example of a card.
Well, the Nexus of Fate was busted.
That should not be available.
Well, no, it's not just in general. It's specifically, they said this one just jumped straight to being banned because it's just too out of control. Discontinuity stacks to give you even more time walks. And obviously, there's just all the usual problems with Wilderness Reclamation and Uro and all that kind of stuff. The thing I don't understand is why don't they just ban Growth Spiral in like tons of formats? That card is just not even close to right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we'd only seen like one card from that set, and it was Growth Spiral. Like, it's gonna be a weird universe if this isn't just the best card from that set.
Yeah, it's stupid, but yeah, you're right. It's exactly as good as it looks. I think partly because it's not exactly a complicated card to figure out.
Yeah, it has all the effects that are not the rules, right? Like, the rules are saying draw a card every turn and play a land every turn, right? So those are, I guess you attack once a turn too, but like those are like the 2 main symmetries around which the game is built, and it breaks both of them for 2 mana. So at instant speed.
Maybe, I mean that is a way to look at it. I just think that at the end of the day, though, you got to like look at what are your baselines, what are your assumptions, because like growth spiral is you get to the place of growth spiral being okay because you're like, I know it's like explore, but it costs blue instead of colorless in exchange for being an instant. You could go, oh, okay, yeah, that could be okay. Except not only is that more powerful than explore isn't the baseline. Explore is more powerful than rampant growth. And also rampant growth isn't the baseline. Rampant growth is an effect that's frequently too powerful for standard.
I mean,
so, what is going on here?
Rampant growth is... I just remember if the decks played rampant growth, it was just like if you had a rampant growth in your opening hand, it was like you had a completely different deck than if you didn't have the rampant growth in your opening hand, right? You're playing 4-drops on turn 3 is different than playing 4-drops on turn 4. When the other guy is, especially if you went first.
Yep. By the way, the red-green deck that got that, the Burning Tree Emissary banned, it's interesting. It's not just all in. You know what I mean? Like sometimes the Burning Tree Emissary decks in some formats will just be super, super hyper fast, right? But like a lot of in Historic, you got a lot less cards to choose from. So the real successful deck was just a real straightforward, like Llanowar Elves and Zerta Goblin, Bone Crusher Giant, Questing Beast. Just monsters, just brawl.
So yeah, but are you just getting your stuff out one turn faster because the Burning Tree Emissary kind of replaces itself on the mana?
Yeah, it's just a 0-cost 2/2.
Let's go.
Like light it up.
They don't have a Nykthos in Historic, do they?
No.
Because I could see Burning Tree Emissary being very good with Nykthos. I don't know. It's just me.
The mono red deck that they play in Historic actually is kind of interesting. It's not even mono red, really. I mean, a lot of people splash black, but for like a little bit of reanimation stuff, because Call of the Death Dweller is pretty sweet with some of the goblins. But like if you Call of the Death Dweller and you get back Goblin Chain Whirler, yeah,
wow,
that's pretty good, right?
I mean. Like, I'm thinking about, you're just saying these sentences, and I'm like, I wouldn't splash black. That's like giving up. That's what I was thinking. And then you're like, oh, well, what if you call it a Death Whirler Goblin Chain Whirler? And then I was thinking, oh, I would have a menacing Goblin Chain Whirler. He's so good at fighting because he has first strike, but they can't block him now because menace.
Oh, my God.
But they really can't fight him because all their guys are dead. Right?
Yeah.
That's really what happens, right?
Call of the Death Dweller is super sweet with Goblin Matron anyway,
I mean...
just get back at Demonic Tutor. Why not?
I mean, it's hard for me to get more excited than the Chain Whirler.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Chain Whirlers, that's a big boy right there. But there's also... You got some backup plans. I mean, it's not like Fanatical Firebrand is any slouch. That's not a bad one to give Death Touch to.
Oh yeah, especially you can get you could get somebody else back and the a 1-drop. That's sweet.
Yeah. Plus, once you're going to be giving menace to creatures, it's kind of sweet if they have haste, right?
Yeah. I mean, I just keep thinking about Call of the Death Dweller, that Chain Whirler. He has first strike and Death Touch? What? No one would want to block him anyway.
Yeah, that's why I think you can put the menace somewhere else,
Yeah, all right.
The problem is the mana's not great in Historic. Like, what else are you using besides, like, Dragon Skull Summit and Blood Crypt?
I mean, that's a lot. You and I have had to slodge through formats where the best thing we could do is play, like, 4 Llanowar, or whatever, Yavimaya Coasts, and that was it. You played 4 Yavimaya Coasts, and if you want to get to City of Brass, you can.
One of the oddballs you get to play in Historic, and the power level is such that you actually want to, is Muxus Goblin Grandy. Legendary Goblin, 4 red. So he's a 4/4, and you sort of Goblin Ringleader for 6 cards. But then you get all the goblins that cost 5 or less. But you get them straight onto the battlefield. And then Muxus also has this other ability where he just becomes 10/10 or whatever, because it's like when he attacks, he gets +1/+1 until on a turn for each other goblin you control. But the whole big thing with this guy is that you just cascade all of the goblins in the top 6 cards of your deck.
I mean, this card seems like you could potentially save a lot of mana, right? So he costs a lot. He costs 6, but then you get like some arbitrary amount of mana back.
Well, but you don't really pay 6 for him. This is a deck with not that much land. You're barely over a third land. You're using 4x Skirk Prospector, and then you've got some amount of Goblin War Chief action. So it's not like you're really paying retail on Muxus here.
Well, he seems very grand. I don't know if I would add the E's, but if that's how he wants to spell it, who am I to disagree? Yeah, you're right. This is a weird format.
Yeah, it's really hard to know what's even the deal. Like, for instance, dude, historic Tron. So first of all, they play Tron in this format, but there is no Tron. So you're like, what? Wait, what do you mean Tron? Well, it's like Tron, but all your land produce 1 mana. It's like it's basically colorless, but like you just play out your cards, right? Like you just have.
How is it Tron then?
Well, you have Power Stone Shard is the way you get ahead. So it's Tron because you're playing all the stuff like Karn, Scion of Urza, Karn the Great Creator, Ugin the Ineffable, Ugin the Spirit Dragon. You're playing all that kind of stuff. And then your mana base looks kind of like some ramp decks because Field of the Dead is still legal. Oh. And so you use... Yeah, so what you're really doing is you're trying to use... you're trying to just keep dropping hits... and then eventually Field of the Dead, but you're getting ahead with stuff like, Power Stone Shard is the main one. But they actually, to give you an idea of the kind of stuff they play in this format, Palladium Mirror and Mind Stone are actually, players.
So I think I want to play Historic now to play this Tron deck. So this deck, if I understand it, has, you're like Mind Stone turn 2, turn 3 Solemn Simulacrum, and this deck has got exactly 1 forest, 1 island, 1 mountain, 1 plains, and 1 swamp, no colored cards, right? Like, just get whatever basic you can, because the next turn you want to string together to activate Golos, right? That's kind of part of the plan.
Well, and you do want to activate Golos because that's what you have colored mana for at all.
Yeah.
But part of it is that you just want to have some basics anyway so that you can go get them with Solemn Simulacrum, and you need your basics to have different names because you're playing with Field of the Dead,
Very nice. This has like my favorite land that nobody ever plays, but I think is fantastic.
Zalfarian Void?
No way, man.
Not the Scophos. Don't be Labyrinth of Scophos.
No, Karn's Bastion.
Oh, people play that all the time. Best. Oh yeah, they play. I guess not all the time, but they play it a little.
I like it. I like it in decks that like you have an incubation druid in play, and then like it hasn't got any counters on it, and like their attack, and you're like, oh wait, block with my incubation druid, throw some counters on that Karn's Bastion. All of a sudden, your guy's huge, eats their guy. They're like, I didn't see that coming. You're like, I know, because nobody plays Karn's Bastion.
Never changed, Michael J.
Karn's Bastion Nissa. Oh my gosh, man! This deck doesn't have Nissa, but you can put counters on the Nissa, and you can put counters on the Nissa lands.
Dude, what's up with Chromatic Orrery? So you can Karn to go get your 1-of copy of Chromatic Orrery, and it's the 7-cost legendary artifact. You can spend mana as though it were mana of any color. Okay, I guess you can activate Golos. It taps for 5 colorless, and then it also has 5 in tap, draw a card for each color among your other permanents, which you don't
have
really,
any.
yeah, you don't really use that part all that much. I mean, you can, right? Like Field of the Dead gives you black zombies, you know? So that's like, that's a card.
All right, so this deck that I've seen has, in addition to a Chromatic Ori in the sideboard, has got like multiple copies in the main deck. So I guess if you've got one of the Ugins, you can pop that bad boy out for 5, right? And then it taps for 5. It's like a freebie.
There's no way you need to go to 12 with this deck, though.
No, I have no idea. This doesn't seem like... If it said draw a card when it came into play, I think I would be more amenable to this. And I got to tell you, this deck has got like 13 Planeswalkers, and I think that I would be down for... what's the name of that 6 casting cost artifact that turns off all the Planeswalkers? I think I would be down for that before main deck Chromatic Ori, but I might be wrong.
Some people... do play white in this deck, not just straight colorless. They give up all the fancy lands, or most of them. You still, you end up in a spot being able to play Blast Zone or whatever, maybe some Castle Arden Vale, but you play them on a white version. The big pickup is the combination of Elspeth Conquers Death and Shadow the Sky. But the real fanciness is Maze Mind Tome. 2 colorless artifact, tap, put a page counter on Maze Mind Tome and scry 1, or 2 and tap, put a page counter on Maze Mind Tome, draw a card, and when there are 4 or more counters on it, exile it and gain 4 life. So I don't know about all the need to grind, but I can at least respect somebody wanting to play with Shadow of the Sky and Elspeth Conquers Death, right?
Yeah, that white version sounds fantastic. I would be very happy to have Elspeth Conquers Death in this deck. This deck is like all super hit permanents.
Yep. And then it still gets to play Power Stone Shard. It's not like any of that, clashes there. That's your primary mana engine. But what do you think of Thran Temporal Gateway as a Karn target in order to let you kind of cheat your Ugins into play?
Seems like a fancy way to do it.
These people must just need something that makes a ton of mana, because, to me, I would rather play Thran Temporal... if I have to play one, I'd rather play Thran Temporal Gateway than the 7-cost Thran, right?
Well, I'm just trying to look at this, and I said, the typical list has 23 lands, right? Those are really expensive cards for 23 lands. I mean, so
I think you're supposed to play more, but also part of that is the fact that you've got stuff like Mind Stones and Power Stone Shards and
Palladium Mirror.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, or Treasure Map, or this alternate Treasure Map.
I don't think I'd want to do it that way. I think I would try to emphasize things that were closer to Solemn Simulacrum. But, I mean, is it bad to play cards that, like Bertha Meletis, for example, especially playing the white version, that are going to get you to the lands that you need and potentially combo with the things that you're going to have elsewhere in your deck? I mean, if anything, that gives you a second color of permanence alongside the zombies from your Field of the Dead to cash in that Chromatic Ori. I don't know. I think I'd want some other more consistent cards.
Why do some of them play the Helm of the Host? That 4-cost legendary equipment at the beginning of combat on your turn, you get a token copy of the equipped creature, except it's not legendary, and the token is haste and has equip of 5.
So if you get Helm of the Host with Karn, the Great Creator, and then you get Meteor Golem with Karn the Great Creator, assuming you've got an overabundance of mana to cast 7 drops and equip Helm of the Host, then you can just basically Vindicate attack every turn, right? That's actually quite a powerful combination.
Yeah, that's actually pretty good. And it's not I could imagine sometimes you end up, just with a bunch of Platinum Angels and they can't beat it.
Yeah, I mean, I played Karn the Great Creator in mono green Planeswalkers a lot last year. I just ended up playing three Meteor Golems in my sideboard. I thought it was a little faster than playing the Helm of the Host combo. But if you're gonna grind, especially if you're playing against some indeterminate number of powerful permanents, it's better to Helm of the Hosts and Meteor Golem every turn than just to actually get fresh Meteor Golems. The
that
one card
sense.
that I would totally want to play multiple copies of in the sideboard that is not present here is Chaos Wand.
You like multiple Chaos Wands?
Yeah, at least 2. Right, so I played one Chaos Wand before, and I was just like, oh, this is really good. I often win when I have this card. And then I was just like, I would just search for 2 Chaos Wands against, a variety of decks. Like, red decks certainly can't beat 2 Chaos Wands. They have a hard time beating 1 Chaos Wand. But, like, a blue deck, you're just like, Chaos Wand, whenever they do something, sometimes you get a counter spell, right? Sometimes you get, like, some crazy thing, like Command the Dread Horde. People who have big spells really hate a Chaos Wand, and people who have redundant decks that have, like, a lot of spells that do the same thing usually can't beat a Chaos Wand. So
that's cool.
Like 2 Chaos Wands is like the lock against some folks.
Dude, that's really good tech. That sounds really good to me. The second Chaos Wand sounds like the type of thing that a lot of people would think is just needlessly greedy, but it's actually just kind of sick. Like, you don't have to limit yourself to one. You can just go get a second one and put the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, it's just utterly the lockdown. Like, there's also really weird situations where people only have like one kind of particular spell in their deck. Like, I mean, this isn't a historic deck, but we were talking about that mono blue flyers deck, and it just has like this narrow number of like spell pierces and counterspellish type stuff. Like, you're just always going to hit a permission spell if in a sideboarded game if you tap the Chaos Wand in that matchup. That's the only kind of spell that they have. So they're like thing, and you're like, counter it every time. Right? So which counter spell it is, you might not know. But, if the entire rest of their deck is permanents, that's what's going to happen.
Did they just flip up, one cost, counter something colorless?
Yeah.
What do you think of everybody uses Amulet of Safekeeping? Is this just the anti-token card of choice for your mono colorless deck?
Yeah, I think that card's pretty good.
It's also, are there any combos that it actually breaks up with that, stuff that targets you is countered unless they pay 1? Do people play in I'm not sure. I'm not super familiar with what all the combos are in Historic.
Yeah, I confess I've never actually played a game of Historic, but I have played Amulet of Safekeeping in Karn decks. And, it's like a lot of the one-ups that you have in your sideboard. You get it for the spot that you want it, and the thing is, especially if you get it in game 1, oftentimes someone just can't remove it, right? Like, I don't think that card is powerful enough to be the lockdown for an entire game, but this deck has such a powerful high end, right? If all you did is turn off like a huge chunk of their deck for a short period of time, then you start smashing them with Ugin or something, game is over quickly.
All right. So finally, one last change to the banned and restricted list. I know this one personally gets you the hardest. In Pauper, Expedition Map and Mystic Sanctuary are both banned.
Mystic Sanctuary really just does seem like a card that's much more powerful than most of the other stuff in the Pauper format. Why is it always blue cards that mess up Pauper?
Sometimes it's like storm cards in red, right?
I don't know. Every single thing I think of that I ever see that people are complaining about in Pauper has to do with untapping land, drawing cards for a prohibitively low amount of mana, or actually drawing cards for a prohibitively low amount of mana, or untapped.
Yeah, I mean, the most recent bans were Gush, Gataxian Probe, and Daze.
Those would be them. So Mystic Sanctuary, I think is clearly a card. I mean, if you look at how Mystic Sanctuary performs in a format like Modern, for example, right? Like you can just get Mystic Sanctuary with fetch lands in Modern. That's not a thing that you can do in Pauper. But if you see what it does in those decks, right? You're just doing this in a format that everybody else is playing at one level, and you're just in a spot where you're like, all right, whatever the cool card that I want to get back over and over again, I can do it without spending a
both of
slot.
These. Yeah, and part of that is that both of these are targeting the same thing. The most recent kind of boogeyman of the format is Tron. And that's Expedition Map here is being banned because of its ability to go set up Tron. And Mystic Sanctuary was like a part of the Tron decks for creating a inevitability, a long game loop, that's kind of miserable to play against. And they actually said that they were being a little proactive with Mystic Sanctuary, and that multiple other archetypes had recently adopted it. And they, even though it wasn't necessarily the main thing going on in all of these, it was a key contributor of negative pressure on the metagame by enabling endgame loops, and it's a card that they believe is going to continue or would continue to cause problems down the road. So,
yeah, I was just looking at like the Delver deck, for example. For some reason in Pauper they let you play with this card. It costs you, and you can counter any kind of spell. That's just what it says on that card. Weird, right? And I think that card is probably like deeply more powerful than a lot of the other stuff other people are allowed to play. In addition, they get to play Ponder and Preordain, which you're not allowed to do in hardly any other format. 4 of each of those. So I think like just in a quote fair deck like Fairies, which has like 4 Ponder, 4 Preordain, 4 Counterspell, Mystic Sanctuary is just increasing the concentration of cards that are better than everybody else is playing.
I mean, dude, why not play Brainstorm?
The blue-black Delver deck plays it, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you just need to be able to shuffle your deck or whatever, or else what are you even doing? But
Evolving Wilds, my man.
Whatever you need. Yeah, the Pauper ban list right now, it's mostly blue cards, but it's not entirely blue cards. The blue cards are like Cloud of Fairies, Daze, Frantic Search, Gataxian Probe, Gush, Mystic Sanctuary by proxy, Peregrine Drake, Temporal Fissure, Treasure Cruise, High Tide. But there are a few other ones. In green, there's Invigorate, for bursty infect kills.
Really? That one's banned?
Oh, yeah. Just turn 2 kills, baby. It's hard to defend against that in Pauper. And then for red, you got to ban Empty the Warrens. That one, totally makes sense. And then for black, you got to ban Sinkhole, Hymn to Turok, and if you consider cranial plating.
I think that's hilarious. They call the format Pauper, but the black cards cost like $200 each.
And then of course, because it's a format, they've banned Arcum's Astrolabe, and
that ban was long ago, right? They had to handle that a while ago. So I have to say that Pauper ban is not actually that close to my heart, but I will tell you, I am extraordinarily happy anytime Mystic Sanctuary gets banned. My only experience of playing against Mystic Sanctuary, and when I say only, it's in quotes because I've done it so many times, is these horrible people in Modern who just keep getting back their one main deck timely reinforcements. And if they can't do that or anything like it in any formats, I think the world just got to be a better place.
Sure. Okay, dude, actually, one last question. I gotta quiz you on this.
Okay.
If you can guess, name a single card on the Brawl banned list. There's 6 cards. A single card besides Oko or Winota. There's 4 other cards that are banned in Brawl. The sort of like
Once Upon a Time.
Low power. Nope. It's so you're playing Commander, but with like standard legal cards, right? Or like a much lower powered set, but like the ban list for Brawl is Oko Winota, Lutri the Spell Chaser, Golos Tireless Pilgrim, Dranith Magistrate, and Sorceress Spyglass.
Sorceress Spyglass?
Same reason as Dranith. Both Dranith and Sorceress Spyglass just make it so you can't play your commander.
Oh, okay.
And then Golos and Lutri are too busted part of it is Lutri, kind of like the companion trigger. I mean, the rule is like a freebie because you're playing commander anyway, so it's kind of dumb.
So Lutri's is too good.
And then, Lutri is just too much of a free roll. Sorcerer Spyglass and Dranith are too unfun for the format. Golos is too good. as a commander. And, obviously Winota and Oko are busted. So, but anyway, that's your banned and restricted list.
But I failed the quiz. But
that's okay. You'll get them next time. We'll see. We'll quiz you again next week.
I'll say Lutry.
Well, no, it's got to be next week. You're going to have to remember.
No, I'll say Golos. I didn't even remember what I said about Lutry. All right.
Okay. Awesome, dude. See you next week.
In life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredges with jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had